So I just got done reading this book by Marcus Borg, who's a theologian called Jesus: New Vision. Kind of put into words some of my own theological ideas about Jesus, about Christ, and what he was about, basically. First of all, I provided some really good kind of historical background. Um, you know, when Judea was when this region was conquered by Rome, the Romans imposed these taxes on them, and I think the Jews were already paying these tithes to the priestly order, and to the temple. We think of tithes today as sort of voluntary giving to charity, but for them it was tithes were actually mandatory. Um, but there was so with the Roman taxes there was mandatory taxes you had to pay, plus the mandatory tithes to the temple. Though for that one there was no enforcement mechanism. So so at the time, there were some people who, of course, were unable to pay their taxes at all, became landless workers with with no home and sort of at the bottom economic rungs of society. Um, there were some who were able to pay the taxes but not the tithes, and so since the taxes were since not paying their taxes would have trouble, but the tithes, but just giving the tithes wouldn't, then they went with what was the most economically viable option for them. And then, of course, there were those who were well-to-do enough to pay both the tithes and the taxes. Um, so anyway, there was the state of Rome at the time, and this kind of created a moral dilemma, and with people not paying their tithes and doing other things, there was a fear that Israel was losing its identity and drifting away from the way of holiness. Um, and so there were a few different groups spring up around that time. There were the Sadducees, who were the established religious order in charge of the temple, who were also in cahoots with Rome. Um, there was the Essenes, who sort of ostracized themselves from society to live a life of holiness apart from the rest. Um, there were the Zealots, who who tried to violently overthrow Rome, refused to pay the taxes and only paid the tithes, believing in the that obedience to God meant resistance to Rome. And then there were the Pharisees, who emphasized the purity of obeying the law, were okay with paying the taxes as long as the obedience to God was number one, and that you obey all this, the law of the Torah, and pay your pay the tithes to the temple, and fulfill all these other sacred duties. Um, so amidst this, Jesus comes along into here, and I think Marcus Borg does a really good job of pointing out what I've always kind of felt was Jesus' essential message, which is he was kind of protesting against this whole kind of holiness attitude, the attitude, the Pharisaic attitude about ritual purity. The Pharisees would not eat with quote unquote sinners because that defiled them. They would not associate with anyone who was not keeping the Torah, and they were sort of kind of obsessed with purity, and whereas Jesus comes into this framework with a message of compassion. he didn't deny that God was holy, but he emphasized that compassion above all else as the center of what God is like, and so his message was, one of radical inclusivism. I mean, he shocked people by dining with beggars, prostitutes, tax collectors, sinners, and it's not just dining with them, but it's like there was actually like banquets and stuff, because the his detractors accused him of being a glutton and a drunkard, which, although that's probably exaggerated a little bit, it should be some indication that Jesus was not a strict ascetic in the usual sense we think of, and that he probably did party from time to time. But yeah, and it's interesting, when they ask him, why do your followers not fast, and he said, he said something, did the would it be proper to have people fast when the bridegroom is among them? Comparing it to a wedding, because the point is, the kingdom of heaven is here, so people should be rejoicing, not fasting. Anyway, yeah, it's really a radical contrast of the sort of ritual purity side of religion versus the compassion that kind of drives, I think, a lot of the deeper kind of sides of religion. I noticed that the kind of purity side of it tends to be the more right-wing form of religion throughout the world. I mean, if you look at, in the East, Gautama Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama had protested the caste system in India, which was based on the same kind of purity standards. And then, in fact, there have been actually a whole history of reformers within India, within the Vedic tradition, who denounced the caste system and emphasized direct realization over the kind of ritual purity which had dominated their religion. And yet today in India there are still many Hindus whose form of religion revolves around that kind of ritual purity. So I mean, I think that form of religion tends to be grasped onto by sort of authoritarian powers as a way of maintaining the status quo, as a way of justifying the social order and the sort of inequality in society. Whereas those who grasp onto that compassion, the sense of a more universal care and love, that can be a truly radical, transformative power, and I think that is getting closer to the truth that all the religions are trying to point to. So, I guess I'll just leave it at that for now. Peace.